The All England Club is entering a state of complete meltdown as the world's most prestigious tennis tournament faces a catastrophe that threatens to change the sport forever. On June 27, 2026, those pristine grass courts in SW19 transformed into the center of a scorched-earth rebellion that the executives never saw coming. The global audience watched in shock while the biggest stars in the game decided they had finally reached a breaking point. This was much more than just a minor disagreement over scheduling or court assignments. Since the players launched a full-scale revolt against a system they claim operates on a foundation of manipulation. Establishment credibility began its rapid downfall the moment the media blackout was announced to the public. World number ones Aryna Sabalenka and Jannik spearheaded a calculated movement to bring every broadcast obligation to a grinding halt. Instead of just walking away from the cameras, these athletes abandoned a corporate playbook that has ignored their demands for decades. This high-stakes power play served to expose the reality of what happens behind the scenes, and the executives at the All England Club quickly realized they were facing a crisis they couldn't simply buy their way out of. Tournament organizers have operated with a sense of total immunity for over a century, believing that the prestige of the Wimbledon trophy would keep every player in line. That history meant nothing to the current generation, who are now more organized and united than they have ever been in the sport's history. The collective power of the athletes standing up to a machine that functions as an undisputed monopoly has become the driving force of the story. Facing them is an executive structure that has consistently prioritized corporate profit over the very people who make the tournament possible. Preemptive strikes from the All England Club came in the form of a massive £64 million prize pot, which they announced with the hope of dominating the news cycle. They shouted about this being the largest payout in tennis history and wanted every headline to focus on the $3.6 million checks waiting for the champions. But the documents show that this was a calculated distraction, because while the raw numbers look impressive, the actual percentage of revenue going to the players is lower than it was 10 years ago. The result was an immediate backlash when players realized the system was rigged to keep wealth at the top while organizers pocketed the massive surplus. Sabalenka took a direct shot at the 15% revenue share that Grand Slams have forced onto players for years, and she refused to be silenced by the threat of fines or suspension. This brave stance highlighted a procedural failure that the WTA and the All England Club have used to keep players from seeing the true financial numbers. They want the world to believe that the players are being greedy, yet the facts tell a very different story of a movement fighting for the athletes being bled dry by skyrocketing tour costs. Broadcast partners who pay over £60 million for rights started to panic as the media boycott took hold. They weren't getting the interviews they paid for, and they weren't getting the access they needed to sell their coverage to viewers at home. The All England Club found itself caught in a pincer movement between their biggest stars and their biggest financial backers, creating a situation that spiraled out of control. Nobody expected the executives to be so unprepared, but they clearly had no idea how to stop the financial bleeding once the superstars walked away from the microphones. Public embarrassment for the leadership continued as more players joined the coalition, and eventually it wasn't just the top names making noise. Players ranked 50, 100, and even 200 in the world stood in solidarity with their leaders to explain why the £80,000 check for a first-round loss is a deceptive figure. After taxes, coaching fees, travel, and logistics, many of these athletes are actually losing money just to compete, which meant the industry finally saw that the current model is a systemic failure, leaving the majority of the tour in financial freefall. Leadership at the All England Club claimed they were surprised and disappointed by the revolt, but that was a calculated lie designed to save their own skin. The reality is that they have been ignoring formal letters and requests for transparency since March of 2025. They were hoping to wait the players out, thinking that the pressure of the tournament would force them to cave, but they completely underestimated the resolve of the athletes. The people fighting the system have finally found their voice, and they aren't going to let the executives drown them out with corporate jargon anymore. The battle has now shifted to the WTA playbook and the deep-seated financial issues that have plagued the sport for years. Players are using specific rulebook clauses to highlight exactly how they have been sidelined, while the Grand Slams operate as non-profits, which is a convenient way for them to hide where the vast majority of their cash is really going. They claim 90% of their profit stays in the game, But the players are demanding to see the receipts to understand why executive salaries and facility upgrades always seem to come before player welfare. Accusations of player entitlement are falling apart under the weight of the evidence, and the problem was made worse when rumors surfaced that Larry Scott was advising the player union from the shadows. As the former face of the WTA, he knows exactly where the bodies are buried and how the establishment uses administrative costs to pad their own pockets. The current executives are in a total tailspin because the system is being dismantled from the inside out, and the establishment appears powerless to stop the information leaks. Immediate increases to 16% of gross revenue are now at the top of the player demand list, and their roadmap shows that number hitting 22% by the year 2030. They are also demanding a player welfare fund that actually works, including better pensions and maternity leave that covers more than just the basics. What nobody expected was for the systemic implications to be this massive, because if the players win here at Wimbledon, every other Grand Slam and every other major tournament will be forced to follow suit. Emergency meetings over the weekend saw the feud reach a boiling point as all England club directors were forced to sit across the table from the very players they tried to silence. They weren't used to being challenged like this, especially by athletes they expected to simply bow to the traditions of the club. But those days are over, and the new generation of players recognizes that they are the product with the ultimate leverage. The establishment thought they could ignore the problem until it went away. But here's the thing. The problem only grew louder and more expensive with every passing hour. Major sponsors are starting to ask questions about why their brands are being associated with such a toxic environment, and the industry is now distancing itself from the leadership. The reality is that the executives have lost the locker room, and they might have lost the confidence of the board along with it. Panic statements are being released every hour, but the facts are already out in the open, and the players' innocence is verified by the sheer transparency of their demands. Secret prize money wars have turned into a public scandal that can no longer be ignored by the tennis establishment. The players have exposed how the tournament organizers use hush money to prevent a larger conversation about revenue sharing by giving a little more at the top to satisfy the superstars. But Sabalenka and Sinner have broken that cycle once and for all because they understand that for tennis to thrive, it needs more than just 10 people at the top making a living. Negotiations behind closed doors were even more tense than the public realized. The executives tried to use the history of the tournament as a weapon, talking about the spirit of Wimbledon and the tradition of the grass. But the players countered with the cold, hard reality of their bank statements. They showed that while the tournament's revenue has soared by hundreds of millions of pounds, the players are actually getting a smaller piece of the total cake than they did back in the 90s. The math doesn't lie, and the All England club had absolutely no answer for the data presented to them. Tactical pauses were agreed upon on June 29th after the executives were forced to make significant concessions to the player coalition. They agreed to form a joint committee with the players to review the entire financial structure of the tournament, which represents a massive legal and financial defeat for the establishment. They were forced to admit that the current system is not sustainable, but the players aren't celebrating yet because they know that a committee is often where good ideas go to die. Systemic failures in the prize money model are now exposed for the entire world to see, and the villain's reputation is in a state of total freefall. They try to play a game of chicken with the most talented athletes on the planet, and they lost, which means the industry will never look at the All England club the same way again. The veil of prestige has been lifted to reveal a corporate machine that was more interested in its own survival than the health of the sport, and the bridge has been burned forever. Every paragraph of the WTA's rebuttal has been dismantled by the player coalition, and their claims that the players don't understand the costs of running a world-class event have been proven false. The players responded by hiring their own forensic accountants to look at the books, and what they found was even more shocking than they imagined. Tens of millions of dollars were being shuffled between accounts to hide the true profit margins, and the reality is that the money has always been there, the executives just didn't want to share it. Dark days are ahead for the traditionalists, but the future of the game looks brighter than ever thanks to this rebellion. The calculated lie that the tournament couldn't afford more has been exposed once, and for all by the players' forensic team. The reality is that the All England club has more than enough resources to satisfy the players while remaining the most prestigious event in the world, yet they simply chose not to. They chose to fight their own stars instead of partnering with them, And now they are paying the ultimate price in the court of public opinion. Internal chaos is what really defined the establishment's response to this crisis, as the board was completely divided on how to handle the situation. Some wanted to cave immediately to save the broadcast rights, while others wanted to ban the players for life. That level of dysfunction is exactly what happens when a monopoly is finally challenged by people who aren't afraid of the consequences. The players won because they were willing to lose everything to change the system, and that bravery has shifted the power dynamic in professional tennis for good. Deep scars have been left on the sport that will take years to heal, and the fans have seen the naked greed that exists at the top levels of the administration. They have seen how the people in charge view the athletes as interchangeable parts in a machine rather than the stars of the show. But they have also seen the courage of the players who stood up for what is right, and the public supports the players because they know that without them, there is no Wimbledon. The All England club thought they'd destroy the player movement with a single paycheck, but they only destroyed themselves. They thought they could use their power to silence the truth, yet they only succeeded in giving it a louder platform that reached every corner of the globe. The reality is that the war for the soul of tennis is just beginning, and the establishment is already on the defensive. The players have realized their own value, and they are never going to let the executives forget it again. The establishment ran out of time because they thought they could play the long game against a unified front. Every day the media blackout continued. They lost millions of dollars and a piece of their legacy until they were forced to the table by the very people they tried to look down upon. This is a story of a systemic failure that was finally met with a systemic solution that couldn't be ignored. The players didn't just win a raise, they won the right to be treated as equal partners in the multi-billion-dollar business of professional tennis. Leadership teams at the WTA and the All England Club are now under a microscope with calls for a complete overhaul of their executive structure. The industry recognizes that they need people who can build bridges instead of burning them down during a crisis. The calculated lie of the past is no longer a viable way to run a sport in 2026, and the people in the tall towers are finally realizing that they are not invincible. The world is watching, the documents are out, and the players are ready for the next battle. Tailspins are the only way to describe the villain's reputation, and it is a fall from grace from which they may never recover. They gambled the prestige of the tournament on a lie, and they lost everything in the process. The fans, the sponsors, and the players have all moved on to a new era of transparency and fairness, and while the All England Club will continue to host tournaments, the aura of purity is gone. It has been replaced by the reality of a business that was forced to do the right thing only when it had no other choice. Final words on this scandal indicate that the system only works when everyone is at the table together. The executives tried to run the show from behind a curtain, but the players pulled that curtain down to reveal the truth. The people who fought the machine have proven that even the most powerful institutions can be brought to their knees when the facts are undeniable. This is a victory for the underdog, and a warning for every other corporate entity that thinks it can exploit the talent that makes it successful. The All England Club thought they'd destroy the player coalition, but they only destroyed their own legacy. He thought he could use his power to silence the truth, but the truth came out anyway. They thought they'd destroy Sabalenka and Sinner's careers, yet they only made them into icons of a new movement. The villain thought they'd destroy the hero, but they only destroyed themselves.